The scream that tore from Shanice Williams' throat died in her chest the moment she saw him. If you think you've seen it all, wait until you hear what this black waitress found in a billionaire's basement. But before we get there, let me tell you what she did next changed everything. The mansion at 1847 Riverside Drive had been silent for weeks, and Shanice, a 32-year-old single mother, working 3 jobs just to keep the lights on, had taken the late-night cleaning gig without asking questions. The pay was too good, $500 for one night's work. Her manager at Rosie's Diner had connected her with a property management company. And Shanice, with rent 2 months overdue and her daughter Amara needing new shoes, couldn't afford to be picky. She'd arrived at 11 p.m., her old Honda sputtering into the circular driveways of the limestone mansion that looked like it belonged in a magazine. The key was under the mat, just like they'd said. The house was cold, sterile, and felt abandoned despite its grandeur. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, marble floors stretched endlessly, and every surface gleamed with wealth Shanice had only seen on television. She'd started in the kitchen, scrubbing counters that barely looked when she heard it, a sound so faint she almost convinced herself it was the old pipes settling. But then it came again, a moan, weak, human, coming from somewhere below her feet. Shanice's heart hammered against her ribs as she followed the sound to a door she'd assumed was a coat closet. When she opened it, steep wooden stairs descended into darkness, and that's when the smell hit her, sweet, waste, and something metallic that made her stomach turn. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to call the police, to get out of this house and never look back. But Shanice had grown up in the Roof Faces project in South Chicago, and she learned early that sometimes the scariest thing you can do is also the right thing. She descended those stairs with her phone's flashlight trembling in her hand. And what she found at the bottom would haunt her for the rest of her life. Chained to a metal pipe in the corner of the unfinished basement was a man Owal. His expensive suit was torn and filthy, his face so swollen and bruised she could barely make out his features, and his wrists were raw and bleeding from the restraints. But it was his eyes that stopped her cold. Even in his broken state, even through the pain and dehydration, those eyes held a fierce intelligence that recognized her presence immediately. "Please," he whispered, his voice like sandpaper against concrete. "Please, they'll kill you if they know you saw me." Shanice stood frozen, her mind racing through 1,000 scenarios. This was clearly someone important. The remains of his Rolex still clung to his wrist, and even beaten half to death, he carried himself with the bearing of the man used to command. She should call 911. She should run. She should do anything except what she did next. Instead, she knelt beside him, her hands shaking as she examined the chains. "Who did this to you?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. The man's laugh was bitter, broken. "My brother, my business partner, everyone I trusted." His eyes met hers with desperate intensity. "If you help me, they'll come for you too. But if you don't, I'm dead by morning." Shanice thought of Amara, asleep at her mother's apartment across town. She thought of the $500 she desperately needed. She thought of every time someone had walked past her when she needed help, every time she'd been invisible. Just another black woman struggling to survive in a world that didn't see her. "I can't unchain you," she said finally, her mind already working through the impossible situation. Not tonight, but I can bring you water, food, keep you alive until I figure out what to do. The relief that flooded his battered face was almost painful to witness. What's your name? He asked, as she stood, already planning her next move. Shanice Williams. She turned toward the stairs, then looked back. And you? Marcus Thornton. The name hit her like a physical blow. Marcus Thornton. The billionaire tech mogul whose face had been plastered across every news channel 3 weeks ago when he'd mysteriously disappeared. The man who built Thornton Technologies from nothing into a $20 billion buyer. The man the entire country had been searching for. And he was chained in the basement while she was supposed to be cleaning the house. Shanice's legs nearly gave out as the full weight of the situation crashed over her. This wasn't just some random crime. This was a conspiracy that reached heights she couldn't begin to imagine. They said you ran away, she whispered. Embezzlement, fraud. They said you stole from your own company and disappeared. Marcus's face hardened despite his weakness. They said a lot of things, all lies, carefully planned lies. He coughed, the sound wet and painful. My brother Calvin, he needed me gone, not just out of the company, gone, dead. But he's smart. He needed time to transfer assets, forge documents, make it look like I destroyed everything before I vanished. Shanice Anet's mind raced. So this houseboat belongs to his mistress, Nicole Chen, my former assistant. The betrayal in his voice cut through the basement's cold air. She was in on it from the beginning. They've been planning this for 2 years. Shanice climbed the stairs on shaking legs, her mind reeling from the impossibility of what she'd just discovered. She went through the motions of cleaning for the next hour, her body on autopilot while her brain tried to process the situation. She couldn't go to the police. Mark made that clear. Calvin Thornton had spent weeks painting his brother as a criminal, and he had the resources to make any accusation against him disappear. Besides, what proof did she have? Her word against a billionaire's. She'd be arrested for breaking and entering before she finished her statement. But she couldn't just leave him there to die either. Despite everything, the danger, the impossibility, the sheer insanity of it all, Shanice couldn't walk away from someone who needed help. It went against everything her grandmother had taught her, everything she was trying to teach Amara. You help people when they are down. You do the right thing, even when it's hard, even when it's terrifying. She gathered what she could from the mansion's kitchen, bottled water, protein bars, a first aid kit she found in the bathroom. She walked quickly, her ears straining for any sound of a car in the driveway, any sign that someone was coming. When she descended the stairs again, Marcus was barely conscious, his head lolling against the concrete wall. She helped him drink, tiny sips at a time, and cleaned the worst of his wounds with antiseptic that made him, in pain. Why are you helping me? He asked when she'd finished, his eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Shanice sat back on her heels, considering the question. My daughter, she said finally. Amara, she's 8, and she believes the world is good, that people help each other. I can't let her be wrong about that. Something shifted in Marcus's expression, a crack in the hard shell of survival that had kept him alive through weeks of captivity. I'm going to remember this, he said quietly. When I get out of here, if I get out of here, I'm going to remember that a waitress named Shanice Williams risked everything for a stranger. Shanice stood, gathering the empty water bottles. Save your gratitude. We're not out of this yet. She climbed the stairs one more time, finished her cleaning job with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, and left the mansion at 3 a.m. with $500 she'd earned and a secret that could get her killed. As she drove home through empty streets, her phone buzzed with a text from the property management company. Great work tonight. The owner was very pleased. Same time next week? Shanice stared at the message, her blood running cold. Someone had been watching. Someone knew she'd been there, and they were inviting her back. She thought of Marcus chained in that basement, dying slowly while his brother dismantled everything he'd built. She thought of Amara, asleep and innocent, unaware that her mother had just stumbled into something that could destroy them both. Her thumb hovered over the reply button for a long moment before she typed 3 words that sealed her fate. I'll be. What Shanice didn't know, what she couldn't have known as she drove through the dark Chicago streets, was that cameras had recorded her every move in that basement, and Calvin Sutton was already making plans for the black waitress who would just become a liability he couldn't afford to ignore. If you want to know what happened when evil met compassion head-on, make sure you stay until the end, because this is just the beginning, and trust me, you won't believe where the story goes next. Shanice didn't sleep that night. She sat at her tiny kitchen table in the 2-bedroom apartment she shared with her mother and daughter, staring at the $500 bills spread out in front of her like evidence at a crime scene. The money felt dirty now, tainted by what she knew, what she'd seen, what she'd agreed to by sending that text message. Outside her window, the south side of Chicago was waking up, sirens in the distance, the rumble of the early bus, Mr. Patterson from downstairs arguing with his girlfriend again. Normal sounds, a normal morning, except nothing was normal anymore. Shanice picked up her phone and Googled Marcus Sutton for the 100th time since getting home. The articles all told the same story. Brilliant entrepreneur disappears amid fraud allegations. Federal investigators probing Fulton Technologies for embezzlement. Former employees claim Marcus had been erratic, paranoid, possibly unstable in the months before his disappearance. The narrative was perfect, airtight, and completely false. But that's what money could buy, wasn't it? Not just silence, but a whole new... She clicked on a video interview with Calvin Thornton, Marcus's younger brother, recorded 2 weeks after the disappearance. Calvin looked appropriately devastated, his handsome face drawn with concern as he spoke to the camera. My brother was under tremendous pressure, he said, his voice thick with manufactured emotion. I tried to help him, tried to get him to step back, take a break, but Marcus wouldn't listen. And now... He paused, wiping his eyes with practiced precision. Now, I just pray he's safe somewhere, getting the help he needs. The comments section was full of sympathy, praise for Calvin's strength in such difficult times. Nobody questioned the narrative. Nobody doubted the grieving brother who'd stepped up to save the company his sibling had tried to destroy. Mama, you okay? Shanice jumped at the sound of her daughter's voice. Amara stood in the doorway of their shared bedroom, rubbing sleep from her eyes, her natural hair wild around her face. She wore the pink pajamas that were getting too small, the ones Shanice kept meaning to replace but couldn't afford to. I'm fine, baby. Just thinking about work. Shanice quickly gathered the money and shoved it in her purse. You hungry? I can make pancakes before school. Amara's face lit up. Pancakes were a rare treat in their household, where cereal and toast were the usual breakfast. As Shanice mixed butter and tried to act normal, her mother, Dorothy Williams, emerged from the bathroom, already dressed in her home health aide uniform. Dorothy was 63, with silver streaks in her short natural hair and eyes that missed nothing. "You look terrible," Dorothy said bluntly, pouring herself coffee. "That cleaning job go okay last night?" Shanice focused on the pancakes, flipping them with more attention than necessary. "It was fine. Good money. They want me back next week." Dorothy's tone suggested she knew there was more to the story, but with Amara present, she wouldn't push. "Just be careful." "Rich folks' houses, late at night, alone? I don't like it. I can handle myself, Mama." "I know you can, baby. I know you can." But Dorothy's worried frown said she wasn't convinced. After Amara left for school and Dorothy headed to work, Shanice finally allowed herself to fall apart. She sat on the one couch in their living room and cried deep, shaking sobs that she'd been holding back since she'd found Marcus in that basement. She cried for the impossibility of her situation, for the danger she'd walked into, for the little girl depending on her to keep them safe, but most of all she cried because she knew she was going back. The week that followed was the longest of Shanice's life. She went through her routines like a zombie, waitressing at Rosie's Diner, picking up Amara from school, helping with homework, pretending everything was normal, while her mind spun with impossible plans. She bought burner phones from 3 different convenience stores, paid in cash, and spent her breaks researching everything she could find about Marcus Thornton, Calvin Thornton, and Thornton Technologies. The more she learned, the more terrified she became. Calvin wasn't just rich, he was connected. City council members, judges, police commissioners, everyone who mattered in Chicago seemed to be in Calvin Thornton's pocket. Otis and Nicole Chen, the mistress who owned the mansion where Marcus was imprisoned, wasn't just some assistant. She was a corporate strategist who would work for 3 Fortune 500 companies before joining Thornton Technologies. Smart, beautiful, and according to the society pages, practically engaged to Calvin despite his married status. On Thursday, Shanice's phone buzzed with a reminder: cleaning job tomorrow night, 11 p.m., same location. Her hand shook as you read it. She could still back out. She could ignore the message, block the number, pretend she'd never seen Marcus Thornton chained in that basement. Let someone else save him. Let him die. The thought made her physically sick. That night, she waited until Amara was asleep before pulling out one of the burner phones. She thought about this for days, played out every scenario, every possible consequence. What she was about to do was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, and she honestly couldn't tell which. She dialed the number for Chicago's FBI field office, her heart pounding so hard she could barely hear the ringing. "Federal Bureau of Investigation, how may I direct your call?" The operator answered. Shanity opened her mouth to speak, to tell them everything. About Marcus, about the basement, about the conspiracy that had put him there. But then she thought about Calvin's connections, about how quickly evidence could disappear, about how a black waitress's word would stack up against a billionaire's lawyers. She thought about the cameras in that house and how whoever was watching them knew she'd been in that basement with Marcus. If she went to the FBI now, before she had proof, before she had something concrete, she'd be signing both their death warrants. "Hello? How may I help you?" The operator repeated. "Wrong number," Shanice whispered and hung up. She sat in the dark of her bedroom, the burner phone hot in her hand, and made a decision that would change everything. She couldn't save Marcus by going through official channels. The system was rigged, bought and paid for by the very people who'd put him in chains. If she was going to help him, she'd have to do it the hard way, quietly, carefully, and completely alone. The next night, Shanice pulled up to the mansion on Riverside Drive with a plan that was probably going to get her killed. In her trunk, hidden under cleaning supplies, she'd packed bolt cutters she'd bought from a hardware store 40 miles away, paid for in cash. She'd also brought more food, water, antibiotics she'd convinced a sympathetic pharmacist to sell her without a full prescription, and a burner phone for Marcus. If they were going to do this, if they were going to bring down Calvin Staunton and everyone who'd helped him, they needed to be smart. They needed evidence. And they needed each other. As she walked toward the mansion's front door, key in hand, Shanice didn't notice the black SUV parked 3 houses down, or the man inside it watching her every move with cold, calculating eyes. She didn't know that Calvin Staunton had given very specific orders about what to do if the cleaning woman showed too much interest in his imprisoned brother. She didn't know that she'd already been marked for death, and that tonight might be the last time she ever saw her daughter's face. Shanice unlocked the door and stepped inside the silent mansion, unaware that upstairs in the master bedroom she'd never been asked to clean, Nicole Chen was waiting with a gun and a choice that would force Shanice to become someone she'd never imagined she could be. The basement door was open. That was the first sign something was wrong. Last week, Shanice had closed it carefully after her final trip down to Marcus. Now it stood ajar, darkness yawning beyond it like an open mouth. Shanice's blood turned to ice. She set down her cleaning supplies with trembling hands and listened. The house was too quiet. Last week, it had felt empty, abandoned. Tonight, it felt occupied, watched. She pulled out her phone, finger hovering over 911 when she heard footsteps behind her. Slow, deliberate. The click of expensive heels on marble floor. You know, a woman's voice said, cultured and cold, most people would have just done their job and left. But not you, Shanice Williams. You had to be a hero. Shanice turned slowly to find Nicole Chen standing at the top of the main staircase, looking like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Designer dress, perfect makeup, and a small black pistol held with the comfortable grip of someone who knew how to use it. Downstairs, Nicole commanded, gesturing toward the basement with the gun. Now, we need to have a conversation about what happens to people who can't mind their own business. And as Shanice descended those stairs for the 3rd time, she realized with horrible clarity that she wasn't there to save Marcus Staunton anymore. She was there to die beside him, and nobody would ever know what really happened in the basement of the mansion on Riverside Drive. If you think you know where this is going, think again, because what happened next turned a simple rescue into a fight for survival that would shake Chicago's elite to its very foundation. Don't you dare click away. The basement felt different, this colder, darker, like a tomb instead of a prison. Shanice's legs shook with every step down those wooden stairs. Nicole Chen right behind her with the gun pressed against her spine. When they reached the bottom, Shanice's eyes immediately found Marcus in the corner where she'd left him a week ago. He looked worse, thinner, weaker, his skin almost gray in the dim light from the single bulb overhead. But his eyes were alert, burning with rage and something else. Gould, that Shanice, had been dragged into his nightmare. Well, Marcus, Nicole said, her voice dripping with false sweetness as she shoved Shanice forward. Look what I found. Your little savior came back, just like we knew she would. Isn't that touching? Shanice stumbled but caught herself, her mind racing through options that all ended with her and Marcus dead. Marcus asked, his voice stronger than Shanice expected. Calvin's here. Nicole laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Calvin. God, no. Your brother doesn't dirty his hands with the messy parts. That's what he has me for. That's what he's always had me for. She circled Shanice slowly, the gun never wavering. But the way I'm talking about is me and my real partner. The person who actually planned all of this, while Calvin thought he was so clever. The basement door opened again, and someone else descended the stairs. Shanice's heart stopped when she recognized him. Detective Raymond Price, a decorated Chicago PD investigator she'd seen on the news a dozen times. He was the one leading the official investigation into Marcus's disappearance. He was supposed to be one of the good guys. Mom. Williams, Detective Price said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I have to admit, when Nicole told me about you, I didn't believe her. A waitress playing hero. It seemed too stupid to be real. But here you are. He stood beside Nicole, and Shanice saw it then. The intimacy between them. The shared glances. The way they moved in sync. You're working together. Shanice whispered. Calvin doesn't even know, does he? Nicole's smile was shark-like, all teeth and no warmth. Calvin thinks I'm his devoted mistress, helping him take over his brother's company because I love him. He thinks Detective Price is his bought cop, keeping the investigation cold for the right price. What Calvin doesn't realize is that we've been planning to take everything from both Thornton brothers since the beginning. She moved closer to Marcus, running the gun barrel along his bruised face with casual cruelty. See, Marcus here built a $20 billion empire. His idiot brother Calvin wanted to steal half of it. But Ray and I were taking all of it. Every penny, every asset, every offshore account. Detective Price pulled out his own weapon, keeping it trained on Shanice while he spoke. The beauty of it is that everyone already thinks Marcus is a criminal who ran away. When his body finally turns up, tragic suicide, guilt over his crimes, no one will question it. And Calvin, well, he's been so helpful. We have his fingerprints all over this conspiracy. When the truth comes out about what he did to his brother, he'll go to prison for life. Why you two walk away with everything, Marcus said, his voice hard despite his weakness. You've been transferring my assets, forging my signature, setting up accounts in your names. How long have you been planning this, Nicole? Since the day I hired you. Since the day I learned to read a balance sheet and realize people like you have everything, while people like me have to beg for scraps. Nicole shot back, her composure cracking for the first time. You want to know the truth, Marcus? I grew up in a trailer park in Indiana. I clawed my way through state school on scholarships and ramen noodles, while rich kids like you partied with daddy's credit card. I built myself into someone important, someone valuable, and you know what I got for it? A salary, benefits, a pat on the head, and a good job, Nicole. While you made millions of ideas, I fed you. The raw anger in her voice filled the basement, and Shanice understood then that this wasn't just about money. It was about years of resentment, of being invisible, of watching other people win while you did all the work. So you decided to take what you thought you deserved, Shanice said quietly, finding her voice despite her terror. Even if it meant murder. Don't you dare judge me, Nicole snapped, turning the gun on Shanice. You think you're any different? You're a waitress working 3 jobs, raising a kid in a neighborhood where gunshots are background noise, while people like Marcus live in mansions and throw away more money on a watch than you make in a year. You're telling me if someone offered you a chance to change that, to take what's owed to you, you wouldn't grab it? Shanice met Nicole's eyes steadily. Not like this. Never like this. Then you're a fool. Nicole's finger tightened on the trigger, and fools don't survive in the real world. Wait. Detective Price put a hand on Nicole's arm. She might be useful. Think about it. She's been coming here for weeks, alone with Marcus. If we play this right, we can make it look like she helped him escape, like they were working together. Maybe even make it look like she killed him when their plan fell apart. A tragic murders. The desperate waitress and the fallen billionaire. Nicole's eyes lit up with cruel understanding. I like it. It adds another layer of distance between us and the crime. We investigate the scene, find all the evidence pointing to her, and by the time anyone questions the narrative, we're long gone with the money. Shanice felt hope dying in her chest. She thought she was being brave, thought she was doing the right thing. Instead, she'd walked into a trap that would destroy not just her, but her daughter, her mother, everyone who loved her. They'd think she was a murderer. Amara would grow up knowing her mother died a criminal. These, Shanice whispered, hating the desperation in her voice, but unable to stop it. Please, my daughter, she's only 8. Whatever you do to me, she doesn't deserve to lose her mother like this. You should have thought of that before you decided to play hero, Nicole said coldly, but something shifted in Detective Price's expression. A flicker of something that might have been conscience, quickly suppressed. The daughter complicates things, he said carefully. Kids talk. If she starts asking questions, telling stories about her mother's cleaning job, cows on, so we make sure she doesn't talk. Nicole interrupted. We make sure nobody talks. The casual way she said it, the ease with which she contemplated murdering a child, sent ice through Shanice's veins. She looked at Marcus, and in his eyes, she saw the same calculation she was making. They were going to die tonight, both of them, and possibly Amara too, if Nicole and Detective Price decided loose ends needed cutting. Unless they did something desperate. You won't get away with this, Marcus said, his voice stronger now, drawing Nicole's attention back to him. You think you've been so clever, but you've made mistakes. My real assistant, Jennifer, this one you had fired on fake harassment charges. She knows things. She kept copies of files you thought were deleted. Jennifer Martinez. Nicole laughed. She's been discredited. No one will believe a disgruntled ex-Angon lead with an axe to grind. Maybe not, but they'll believe the evidence I sent to my lawyer 6 months ago, sealed with instructions to open it if anything happened to me. Marcus's smile was grim. You're not the only one who can plan ahead, Nicole. The moment I suspected Calvin was moving against me, I started building insurance. Financial records, recordings of conversations, documented proof of every legitimate transaction you've been trying to make look criminal. It's all sitting in Harold Brennet's safe right now, and he has explicit instructions. If I don't check in with him personally every 30 days, he goes to the FBI. The color drained from Nicole's face. You're lying. Am I? Call Harold yourself. His number's in my phone. Oh wait, you smashed that weeks ago, didn't you? Probably should have checked it first. Marcus leaned forward as much as his chains would allow. You've got maybe 72 hours before he opens that envelope, maybe less, depending on what day he counts as the deadline. Detective Price and Nicole exchanged panicked looks, their perfect plan suddenly crumbling. We kill him now, Nicole said frantically. We speed up the timeline. Make it look like how? Like What? Price cut her off, his cop brain working through scenarios. If he's telling the truth, killing him now just triggers the release of evidence that destroys us. We need to find that lawyer, get to that envelope before NOs. That's when Shanice made her move. While they were distracted, arguing, she'd been slowly reaching into her jacket pocket for the only weapon she had, a canister of pepper spray she carried for protection on her late-night walks home from the diner. It wasn't much, but it was something. She pulled it out and sprayed directly into Nicole's face. Nicole screamed, stumbling backward, the gun firing wildly. The shot went wide, slamming into the concrete wall and sending chips of stone flying. Shanice dove for Marcus, her fingers fumbling with the chains she'd studied for a week, looking for the weakness she'd spotted in the old lock mechanism. Detective Price was shouting, bringing his gun up, but Marcus, infocused, even half-starved, was still a fighter. He swung his chained arms like a club, catching Price in the knee and sending him crashing to the ground. The gun skittered across the basement floor. Shanice's fingers found the trick in the lock, a manufacturing defect she'd noticed last week, where the cylinder didn't quite align. She twisted hard, using all her strength, and felt something give. One shackle sprang open, then the other. Marcus was free. Go! He shouted at Shanice, pushing her toward the stairs. Get out of here! Save yourself! But Shanice had made a different choice the moment she decided to come back to this house. She grabbed Detective Price's fallen gun, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold it, and pointed it at the detective as he struggled to his feet. Nobody moves, she said, her voice breaking. Nobody moves, or I swear to God I'll shoot. Fool. And in that moment, with a gun in her hands and two would-be murderers at her mercy, Shanice Williams realized she'd crossed the line she could never uncross. Unharmed, the real question wasn't whether she'd survive the night, but who she'd become by morning. Want to know if a desperate mother can outplay corrupt cops and billionaire conspirators? Keep watching, because Chapter 4 is where everything you think you know gets turned upside down. The standoff in the basement lasted maybe 10 seconds, but it felt like a lifetime. Shanice held the gun with both hands, trying to remember everything she'd ever seen in movies about how to hold a weapon, how to look like you meant business, even when your whole body was screaming to run. Detective Price was on his knees, blood streaming from where his kneecap had connected with Marcus's chains. Nicole was still clawing at her pepper-sprayed eyes, cursing in a mixture of English and Mandarin that would have been impressive if it wasn't so terrifying. Marcus had pulled himself to his feet, leaning heavily against the concrete wall, his legs shaky after weeks of being chained. Shanice, he said quietly, his voice cutting through the chaos. Give me the gun. You don't want this on your conscience. But Shanice didn't move. She kept the weapon trained on Detective Price, whose hands were raised in surrender, but whose eyes were calculating, looking for an opening. My conscience. Shanice heard herself laugh, a sound edged with hysteria. My conscience is the reason I'm in this mess. My conscience is the reason my daughter might grow up without a mother. So forgive me if I'm not too worried about my conscience right now. She took a step forward, the gun never wavering. Here's what's going to happen. Detective Price, you're going to take out your phone. Slowly, I'm gonna call whoever you need to call to get us out of this. Not your corrupt cop friends, not Calvin Staunton, someone who actually cares about the truth. Price's smile was condescending, infuriating. And who would that be? You think there's anyone in this city who isn't bought and paid for? You think anyone would believe a waitress and a supposed criminal over a decorated detective? Try me, Shani said, her finger tightening on the trigger just enough to make Price's smile falter. Because, right now, I've got nothing to lose. You were going to kill me anyway. Kill Marcus. Probably kill my little girl, just to tie up loose ends. So either you help us, or I start shooting and let God sort out the consequences. The change in Price's expression told Shanice she'd finally broken through his arrogance. He saw it now. The desperation of a mother with her back against the wall. The most dangerous kind of person because fear had burned away everything except the will to survive. Okay, Price said slowly, carefully. Okay, there might be someone. An FBI agent I went through the academy with, so... She's straight, doesn't play politics, owes me a favor from back in the day. No, Nicole croaked from her position on the floor, her eyes still streaming. Ray, don't you dare aspel. Shut up, Nicole, Price snapped, and Shanice heard the relationship fracturing in real time. This is over. We lost. We either cut our losses now, or we die in this basement. He slowly reached for his phone, but Marcus stopped him with a raised hand. Not yet. First, you're going to tell us everything. Every detail of your plan, every person involved, every account you've set up. You're going to give us ammunition, and then maybe Debbie, maybe else you make that call. The next 20 minutes were a masterclass in corruption. Detective Price, realizing his only path to survival was cooperation, laid out the entire conspiracy in meticulous detail. He and Nicole had met 2 years ago at a fundraiser for Calvin Thornton's mayoral campaign. Yes, Calvin had political ambitions, dreams of running Chicago that required money Marcus would never willingly give him. Nicole had approached Price with the seed of an idea. What if they could take control of certain technologies, not for Calvin, but for themselves? Price had access to investigative resources, the ability to create false evidence, connections throughout the criminal justice system. Nicole had intimate knowledge of Marcus's business, his routines, his vulnerabilities. Together, they'd crafted a plan that used Calvin's fraternal jealousy as cover for their own theft. They'd fed Calvin information, made him think he was the mastermind, all while setting him up to take the fall when everything came crashing down. The house, Nicole added, her voice still rough from the pepper spray, was supposed to be my reward from Calvin. He bought it for me as a gift, proof of his love. He doesn't know I've been using it to keep his brother prisoner. The irony is almost poetic. She'd managed to open her eyes now, though they were red and swollen. We needed somewhere secure to keep Marcus while we worked through the financial transfers. Somewhere connected to Calvin, so that when the body was found, all evidence would point back to him. You were going to kill your own brother, Shani said to Marcus, though the words were meant for everyone in that basement. Let someone else kill him, frame him, destroy everything he built, all for money. You don't understand what it's like, Nicole said, and there was genuine pain in her voice, now beneath the anger. To be brilliant, to be essential, and to be treated like you're disposable. Marcus paid me $200,000 a year. Do you know how much he made? Millions, billions. I generated half the ideas that built his empire, and I got a salary and a Christmas bonus. Marcus's jaw tightened. You got stock options, benefits, a chance to prove yourself and move up. To what? To eventually make a fraction of what you made. To watch you take credit for my work while I smiled and said, yes, sir. Nicole's laugh was bitter. The system is rigged, Marcus. It's designed to keep people like you on top, and people like me grateful for scraps. I just decided to stop playing by rules that were never meant to let me win. Shanice understood the anger. God, she understand it. How many times had she worked double shifts while her manager's son got promoted, despite showing up late and drunk? How many times had she been invisible, just another black woman serving food and taking orders while customers treated her like furniture? But understanding didn't mean agreeing, so you became worse than the people you hated. Shanice said quietly, "You became exactly what you despised, someone willing to destroy lives for money." The words hung in the air like an accusation, and Shanice saw Nicole flinch. But there was no time for philosophy or moral debates. They had to move, had to act before someone came to check on why gunshots had echoed from the basement. "Make the call," Marcus ordered Detective Price. "Call your FBI friend. Tell her you've uncovered a major conspiracy involving the Stoughton Technologies case, and you need her to come alone. Immediately, no backup, no notification to the local office." Price hesitated. "If I do this, if I cooperate, I want immunity." "A deal. I'll testify against Nicole, against Calvin, against everyone. I'm not going to prison for this." "You don't get to negotiate," Shanice said, pressing the gun harder against his temple. "You get to do what we say and hope we're feeling merciful." But Marcus held up a hand. "Actually, we might need him. If he testifies, if he helps us expose Calvin and everyone else involved, we might be able to build a case that actually sticks. Nicole's right about one thing. The system is rigged. We need someone inside it willing to burn it down." Price made the call, his voice steady and professional, as he explained to FBI Special Agent Keisha Morrison that he'd stumbled onto something big, something that couldn't wait for official channels. Shanice listened to his half of the conversation, trying to gauge whether this was a real lifeline or another trap. When Price hung up, he looked at Marcus with something that might have been respect. "She'll be here in 30 minutes. She's good, Marcus. If anyone can help you, it's Keisha." "Let's hope you're right," Marcus said, "because if this is another setup, if she shows up with a SWAT team ready to kill us all, you'll be the first one I throw under the bus." They moved upstairs, Shanice keeping the gun on Nicole while Marcus, despite his weakness, kept watch on Detective Price. The mansion felt different, now not a prison, but a crime scene waiting to be processed. Evidence of conspiracy was everywhere if you knew where to look. As they waited, Marcus pulled Shanice aside, his dark eyes intense with gratitude and concern. "You need to understand something," he said quietly. "When the FBI gets here, this becomes official. Your name goes in reports, your face gets connected to this case. Calvin has lawyers, resources, people who will come after you to discredit your testimony. Your life is about to get very complicated." Shanice thought of Amara, probably asleep now at her grandmother's apartment, innocent and safe. She thought of the simple life she'd been living just a week ago. Hard, yes, struggling, absolutely, but predictable, controlled. That life was over now. The moment she'd descended into this basement, the moment she'd chosen compassion over safety, she'd changed her destiny and her daughter's. "I know," she said finally. "But I also know I did the right thing. For once in my life, I saw someone who needed help, and I didn't look away. Whatever happens next, I can live with that." Marcus nodded slowly. "When this is over, when I get my company back, my life back, I'm going to make sure you and Amara never struggle again. That's a promise. I don't want your charity, Shanice said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. I want my daughter to grow up in a world where helping people doesn't get you killed. I want a system that works for everyone, not just billionaires and the people trying to rob them. Can you promise me that? Before Marcus could answer, headlights swept across the mansion's windows. A single black sedan pulled into the driveway. One woman got out, tall, black, wearing an FBI windbreaker and an expression that said she'd seen too much to be shocked by anything. Special Agent Keisha Morrison had arrived, and with her, the final confrontation that would either save them all or destroy everything they'd fought for. As she walked toward the front door, Shanice realized with crystal clarity that the next hour would determine not just whether Marcus Thornton reclaimed his empire, but whether a waitress from the south side could change a system designed to keep her invisible. And if you think you know how this ends, you're wrong, because the biggest betrayal is still coming, and it's going to come from the person nobody suspected. Stay with us for the final chapter, where secrets, revenge, and redemption collide in ways that will leave you speechless. Special Agent Keisha Morrison walked into the mansion like she owned it, her sharp eyes taking in every detail: the pepper spray residue on the floor, the blood trail from the basement, Marcus Thornton's emaciated frame, and Shanice Williams holding a gun with the desperate grip of someone who'd never held one before tonight. "Ray," Keisha said to Detective Price, her voice flat and disappointed. "I really hoped when you called that you were finally doing the right thing. But looking at this scene, I'm guessing you're just trying to save your owners." She held up a hand before Price could respond, her attention shifting to Marcus. "Mr. Thornton, I'm going to need you to start from the beginning and tell me everything. And Ms. Williams, yes, I know who you are. I ran your name on the way over. You can put the gun down now. You're not a killer, and we both know it." Shanice's hands were shaking so badly, she could barely hold the weapon anymore. She wanted to put it down, wanted to let someone else take control, but trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. "How do I know you're not part of this too?" she asked, hating the tremor in her voice. "How do I know the moment I give up this gun, you won't arrest us and let them walk free?" Keisha's expression softened slightly. "You don't. That's the truth. You don't know me, don't know if I'm dirty or clean. And in your position, I wouldn't trust anyone either. But here's what I can tell you. I've been investigating Thornton Technologies for 3 months, ever since Marcus disappeared. The official line is that he's a fugitive, but something about Calvin's story never sat right with me. Too perfect. Too convenient. Every piece of evidence pointing in one direction, like someone was building a narrative instead of following the truth." She took a step closer, her hands visible and empty. "I've been looking for proof that Marcus was set up, but I couldn't find it. Whoever planned this was good. Really good. But now you're here, and Detective Price is sweating like he's about to confess. And I'm thinking maybe I finally found the crack in the case I've been searching for." Marcus spoke up, his voice stronger now despite his physical weakness. "Calvin didn't plan this alone. He had help. Nicole Chen, my former assistant, and Detective Price here. They were the real architects of the conspiracy. They used my brother's ambition against him, made him think he was stealing my company, while they were really stealing from both of us." Keisha's gaze shifted to Nicole, who sat in a chair with her swollen eyes closed, defeat written across her face. "Is that true, Miss Chen?" Nicole laughed, a broken hollow sound. "What does it matter? You'll never prove it. We're careful. Every transaction has documentation. Every move has a paper trail that points back to Calvin. Ray made sure of..." The only evidence you might have is Marcus's supposed insurance policy with his lawyer. And good luck getting that admitted in court when he's been declared mentally unstable and potentially criminal. About that, Marcus said with a grim smile, I lied. There is no sealed envelope with Harold Brennan. I fired Harold 6 months ago when I suspected he was feeding information to Calvin. Everything I said was a bot to buy us time. The color drained from Nicole's face. You were bluffing. Completely. But it worked, didn't it? Got you talking, got you panicking, made you reveal your entire plan. Marcus turned to Keisha. However, what I do have is something better than sealed documents. I have Nicole herself, on recording, confessing everything. He gestured to Shanice. Show her. Shanice's mind raced, trying to understand what Marcus was talking about. She hadn't recorded anything. She'd been too terrified, too focused on survival to think about evidence. But then she saw the slight gesture Marcus made toward her phone, still in her jacket pocket, and she understood he was bluffing again, playing the only card they had left. She pulled out her phone with trembling hands, praying that somehow, impossibly, it had been recording. And there on the screen was a voice memo that had been running for 37 minutes. In her panic, when Nicole had confronted her, Shanice had accidentally triggered the recording app. Every word spoken in that basement Nicole's confession, Detective Price's detailed explanation of the conspiracy, their casual discussion of murder, all of it was captured in digital clarity. Oh my God, Shanice whispered, it's all here, everything. Keisha took the phone carefully, her professional mask cracking slightly to show genuine amazement. Names Williams, do you have any idea what you've just handed me? This is enough to bring down not just these two, but everyone connected to this conspiracy. Calvin Sutton, the officials he bribed, the judges who looked the other way. This is the kind of evidence that burns down corruption from the inside. Detective Price longed for the phone, desperation overriding his survival instinct. But Marcus, despite weeks of captivity and starvation, moved faster. He caught Price with a punch that had all his rage and betrayal behind it, sending the detective crashing into an antique side table that shattered under his weight. That's for every day I spent in chains, Marcus said quietly, standing over Price's groaning form. And for putting Shanice's life in danger, for threatening her daughter, for being exactly the kind of corrupt cop that makes people lose faith in justice. Keisha was already on her phone, calling for backup, for evidence teams, for federal marshals to start rounding up everyone connected to the conspiracy. As she worked, Shanice felt the adrenaline finally draining from her system, leaving her hollow and shaken. She sank into a chair, the enormity of what had happened crashing over her like a wave. My daughter, she said suddenly, looking up at Keisha with panicked eyes. Nicole and Price, they talked about making sure my daughter didn't talk. They might have people watching her, people ready to action themselves already on it. Keisha interrupted, her phone to her ear. I'm sending agents to your mother's address right now. They'll protect your family until we have everyone in custody. She paused, listening to whoever was on the other end of the line. Yes, full protection detail. This witness is our key to the entire case. Witness, the word settled over Shanice like a weight. She wasn't just a waitress anymore, wasn't just a single mother trying to survive. She was the person who brought down one of Chicago's most powerful families. The person who'd exposed corruption that reached into the highest levels of city government. The person whose testimony would make headlines and put targets on her back for years to come. I want to see my daughter. Shanice said, her voice breaking. Please, I need to see Amara. I need to know she's safe. Soon, Keisha promised. But first, I need you to walk me through everything that happened, every detail you remember. Can you do that? For the next 2 hours, Shanice told her story. She started with the cleaning job offer, the $500 she desperately needed, the sounds from the basement that had pulled her into a nightmare. She described finding Marcus, the decision to help him, the week of planning and fear. She recounted tonight's confrontation, Nicole's confession, the moment she'd realized the pepper spray was her only weapon. She left nothing out, every detail spilling from her like a confession of her own. As she spoke, federal agents flooded the mansion. They photographed everything, collected evidence, took Nicole and Detective Price into custody with charges that would keep them behind bars for life. Marcus was taken to a hospital under armed guard, not as he was a criminal, but because Calvin Fulton had resources and desperation, a combination that made him more dangerous than ever. Calvin will have heard by now that something went wrong, Keisha explained as EMTs loaded Marcus into an ambulance. He'll be scrambling, trying to destroy evidence, maybe trying to run. We have agents on his house, his office, every property he owns. He wouldn't get far, but Marcus grabbed Keisha's arm before they could wheel him away. You don't understand. Calvin isn't the running type. He's a fighter. When he realizes he's cornered, he won't try to escape. He'll try to eliminate the threat. His eyes found Shanice across the crowded room. She's the threat now. Her testimony is the only thing that ties all of this together. If something happens to her, if that recording mysteriously disappears, the whole case falls apart. Keisha's expression hardened. Nothing's going to happen to Miss Williams. She's under federal protection as of right now. But Shanice had grown up in neighborhoods where protection was a promise that couldn't always be kept, where violence found you, no matter how many cops were standing guard. She thought of Amara, probably awake by now and terrified because strangers in FBI jackets had shown up at Grandma's door in the middle of the night. She thought of the life she'd built, small, struggling, but hers, and Hood was gone now, replaced by something she didn't recognize. 3 weeks later, Shanice sat in a safe house on the outskirts of Chicago, watching the news coverage of Calvin Fulton's arrest. He tried to flee to the Cayman Islands, where he'd hidden millions in offshore accounts, but federal agents had been waiting at the private airfield. The footage showed him in handcuffs, his expensive suit rumpled, his face a mask of rage and disbelief. Former tech executive Calvin Fulton was arrested today on charges of conspiracy, kidnapping, attempted murder, and fraud. The news anchor reported. The arrest comes after his brother, Billionaire Marcus Fulton, was found alive after being held captive for nearly a month. Sources say the key witness in the case is a local waitress who discovered Marcus and helped expose the conspiracy. They didn't show Shanice's face or use her full name. Keisha had made sure of that. Shanice knew it was only a matter of time before someone connected the dots. The door to the safe house opened and Marcus walked in, looking almost like his old self. 3 weeks of proper nutrition and medical care had restored much of his strength, though Shanice could still see the haunted look in his eyes that probably matched her own. How's Amara? Again, but Dor started with now. She's good. Confused about why we can't go home. Scared about the trial. But she's tough. She gets that from me. Shanice managed a smile. Your mother's been amazing with her. I never thought I'd be friends with the billionaire's mom. But Dorothy Williams and Patricia Fulton have been thick as thieves. Marcus sat across from her, his expression serious. I told you I'd make sure you never struggled again. I meant it. I've set up a trust fund for Amara full ride to any college she wants, plus enough to live comfortably for the rest of her life. And for you, I'm offering you a position at Thornton Technologies. Not as a waitress, not as cleaning staff, as my Director of Community Outreach and Social Justice. 6-figure salary, full benefits, and a real voice in how we use our resources to help people. Shani stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. Marcus, I don't have a degree. I barely finished high school. I can't. How? You can, he interrupted firmly. You have something more valuable than a degree. You have integrity. You have courage. You looked at an impossible situation and chose kindness over safety. That's the kind of person I need helping me rebuild my company into something that actually matters. Tears filled Shanice's eyes. Why? Why are you doing this? Because you saved my life. Because you risked everything for a stranger. Because every day I was chained in that basement, I had time to think about what I'd built and who it had really helped. I made billions by being ruthless, by prioritizing profit over people. And in the end, that ruthlessness is what let people like Nicole and Calvin get close enough to destroy me. Marcus leaned forward, his voice intense with conviction. I want to build something different now. A company that pays fair wages, that invests in communities, that treats people like Shanice Williams as valuable as people like Marcus Thornton. And I can't do that without you. The trial took 6 months. Shanice testified for 3 days straight, telling the jury everything she'd witnessed, everything she'd endured. She faced Calvin's lawyers, who tried to paint her as an opportunist, a gold digger, someone who'd fabricated the entire story for money. But the recording didn't lie. Nicole's confession, Detective Price's detailed explanation of the conspiracy, their casual discussion of murder, it was all there, undeniable and damning. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Calvin Thornton was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. Nicole Chen got 25. Detective Price, who'd cooperated fully and testified against everyone involved, got 15 with possibility of parole. The corruption they'd exposed led to the resignation of 2 city council members, 1 judge, and the police commissioner. Chicago's power structure had been shaken to its core, and at the center of it all was a black waitress who refused to look away when someone needed help. A year after that night in the basement, Shanice stood on a stage at Thornton Technologies headquarters, addressing a room full of employees and journalists. Amara sat in the front row next to Dorothy and Patricia, all 3 of them beaming with pride. When I took a cleaning job to make ends meet, I never imagined it would lead here, Shanice said, her voice steady and strong. I never imagined I'd help expose corruption or testify in federal court or become the Director of Community Outreach for a billion-dollar company. But most of all, I never imagined that choosing kindness, choosing to help someone when it would be easier and safer to walk away, would change not just my life, but the lives of everyone in this room and beyond. She gestured to Marcus, who stood at the side of the stage. Marcus Thornton and I are announcing today the launch of the Second Chance Initiative. We're investing $500 million into communities across Chicago, job training programs, small business grants, education scholarships, and support services for single parents trying to build better lives for their children. Because I was that single parent once, I know what it's like to work 3 jobs and still not have enough. And I believe that everyone deserves a chance to not just survive, but to thrive. The applause was thunderous, but Shanice barely heard it. She was looking at Amara, at her daughter's proud smile, and thinking about the little girl who believed the world was good and people helped each other. Shanice had almost proven her wrong, almost let cynicism and fear win. But she hadn't. She'd chosen to be the person her daughter believed she was. And in doing so, she changed everything. As the event wrapped up and people came forward to congratulate her, Shanice caught Marcus's eye across the room. He raised his glass in a silent toast of survival, to justice, to the unexpected friendship forged in a basement between a billionaire and a waitress who both learned that real wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the courage to do what's right when everything's on the line. 6 months later, the mansion on Riverside Drive was demolished. In its place, Marcus built the Shanice Williams Community Center, a place where people struggling like she once had could find job training, childcare, legal assistance, and hope. On opening day, with Amara cutting the ribbon and cameras flashing, Shanice realized that the chains that had held Marcus in that basement had been broken by more than bolt cutters and pepper spray. They'd been broken by compassion, by one person's refusal to let another human being suffer alone. And maybe, just maybe, that was the kind of power that could change the world. If this story touched your heart, if it made you believe that one person's kindness can spark a revolution, then hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to hear that's doing the right thing, if when it's terrifying hour's always worth it. Because Shanice Williams proved that heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they wear waitress uniforms and work 3 jobs. And sometimes they change everything.